Welcome to Gone Phishing, a show diving into the cybersecurity threats that surround our highly connected lives. Every human is different. Every person has unique vulnerabilities that expose them to potentially successful social engineering. On this show, we'll discuss human vulnerability and how it relates to unique individuals. I'm Connor Swalm, CEO of Phin Securities, and welcome to Gone Phishing. Hey everyone, welcome back. It is your host, Connor, CEO at Phin Securities, and welcome to another episode of Gone Phishing. We have a friend of mine, Brian Mahon, back on the podcast again. He is a cyber insurance expert, which is everyone's favorite topic, right? And today we're going to talk about the future of cyber insurance. Brian, how are you?
I'm great. Happy to talk about cyber insurance, one of my favorite topics. How are you, Connor?
You're one of maybe 7 people that would be happy to talk about cyber insurance.
Basically, I'm the 1% of the 1% in the insurance industry that's like, people getting hacked.
Hey, there's 8-something billion people on this planet. One person's thing that gets them up in the morning has to be cyber insurance. It might as well be you. Why not you?
Yeah, basically.
Awesome. So I believe this is your 3rd episode that you're on with us.
Yeah.
And in previous episodes, we talked about, common misconceptions. We talked about what is cyber insurance in general? Why is it such a young industry compared to other forms of insurance? And today we're talking about the future of cyber insurance. And I kind of hinted at it, I guess, on our last episode, but is the federal government going to get involved in cyber insurance? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, they're investigating it, right? So the Biden administration has been taking cybersecurity and their cybersecurity strategy pretty seriously, opposed to previous administrations. This isn't, I guess, super uncommon. You might have heard of FEMA, flood
disaster relief.
Yeah, disaster relief. You're going to test my acronym memory. Medicare and Medicaid are, insurance government programs. And if you think about, another dark time in United States history, 9/11, George Bush very quickly, with, full support of everybody else, and government at the time passed what we refer to as TRIA, the Terrorism Risk Insurance Act. And a lot of, MSPs or business owners might vaguely know of this because they have to either accept or reject TRIA when they buy property and casualty insurance, which 3% of their premiums goes into this federal program. And if there's another 9/11 and it ticks all the boxes of it's a big disaster. We're talking hundreds of billions of dollars. Secretary of State or whoever agrees that it is a disaster, and the important word is backstop, right? It's not the government coming in at the very initial, but we're talking insurance carriers going insolvent. We're talking $1 billion cyber risk. So think of when you hear they're going to make a federal backstop for cyber insurance. I mean, we're talking about like a SolarWinds type of data breach times 5 or times 10. We're talking about hopefully things that will never happen, but are smart to think about now proactively as if, they may happen. Obviously a lot of cyber crime or data breaches are often, state-backed or from foreign governments, military or hacker groups. So that's, kind of where I think makes sense for the government to at least consider it.
Yeah, I tell a lot of people that we live in a world where there are legitimate organizations funded by foreign governments within those borders, where their entire mission statement, the quote unquote value they provide as a business, is just stealing from US based companies by any means, which is usually cyber.
Yeah, and they have call centers and they're pretty reputable. I mean, they want you to pay, and they will typically release the keys and take your money and go on about their business to attack someone else. So
Yeah, crazy world we live in. So it sounds like there's this backstop set up so that in the event that there is a super large, I'll just say natural disaster type event, that people can still be made whole because the insurance carrier at that point would be completely incapable of helping, or
Yes,
mostly incapable.
or not that they're incapable of helping, but they've helped as
It's
much as
too
they
big.
possibly could.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
They paid their fair share, and it's more of trying to get everybody back up and running. And I mean, to make parallels, we have the FDIC in Silicon Valley
Yep.
Bank, just a couple months ago. So, I'm all about the train of thought that government just wastes all of our money, and then they're so incompetent and all of that. But at the same time, we created a lot of these programs for a reason,
Yeah.
and I think waiting until there's a SolarWinds times 10 is a bad idea. But maybe we will have to wait, just like 9/11.
Because then you've waited too long.
Yeah.
So we have the federal government in the future in some capacity in your mind. Is there room for technology to disrupt the cyber insurance space?
Yes, everybody loves to talk about insure tech is what we call it. So insure tech could be, a digitally enabled insurance carrier, or maybe just a software company trying to help people like me, agents and brokers. And there are a lot of them out there geared towards cyber insurance, cyber security, cyber risk management. So that's been interesting to see. A couple of them, I guess I'll talk about briefly if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Everybody hates cyber insurance applications, right? Oh, fill out this PDF and it's archaic, and then you got to send it to the carrier, but then this carrier wants their own copy. A lot of people might have heard of APIs. Was an application programming interface, basically a fancy way for software to talk to each other, right? So to paint a parallel, that people might have heard of, like Progressive, a car insurance company, they have something that they sell called Snapshot, basically telematics, right? So, download the app on your phone, download the widget in your car, and we have visibility into your driving. We know when you hard brake. We know when you speed. We know, when you, I don't know, honk the horn a million times. That is coming to cyber insurance. And it's kind of interesting because, if you don't have MFA, or you're not doing, phishing security awareness training monthly or quarterly, and you might not want to share that data with your cyber insurance carrier because you're not really a preferred risk. You're not taking IT control seriously. But maybe you'll share that with your trusted insurance advisor, your trusted, IT advisor, your MSP, or your insurance agent, and let them, review what you have in place and go to carriers from there. In the future, Connor, fill out this PDF is going away, and hey, send this link to your IT guy or MSP. We don't need to ask you if you have MFA or whatever. We know because you logged in with your Microsoft 365 account, or your Sentinel One login, or your whatever. So we can automatically kind of pre-fill any carrier cyber insurance application, 80% of the way.
So even though we might not have it now, it sounds like in the future, the insured, us, we will be able to decide between, okay, do we want to give this data up maybe for reduction in premiums? Do you see that's where it's going? Is like if we're more secure and we give people, the trusted advisors, the access to demonstrate that, do you see that reducing premiums? Like in a, not quid pro quo, I'd never use that phrase, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's tantalizing, right? And I think if carriers can quantify the potential savings, then yes. I mean, someone who's been, in 3 DUIs or whatever, and their insurance can be $10,000, but they download, the telematics, it might be $8,000. So extrapolate that into the cyber world. It's a big, it depends, unfortunately. But a lot of business owners are, deciding, do I invest in this IT widget, or do I buy the cyber insurance, or do I do both? And what's the trade-off, and how does that affect my risk? So the same thing will happen, when it comes to insure tech. On a less, I guess, sophisticated note, I mean, there are kind of universal cyber apps starting to come out that use kind of smart logic. So if you've ever, similarly, when you buy something online, you start typing in your name and it's like, oh, do you want me to autofill your address and your credit card information or whatever? So when you click no, I don't have, or when you click maybe yes, I have phishing security awareness training. And when you click yes, another question pops up that says, well, how frequently, monthly, quarterly, or annually? And maybe, well, what vendor do you use? So if you answered no, it wouldn't follow up with those next two questions. So that's coming as well.
That sounds like a much needed break from the PDFs we talked about earlier in the show. Especially, one thing I didn't mention at the time is it's not even the ones you can fill out online. They make you print it out. They make you write it by hand. I was like, what kind of world are we living in? Like, come on, this is 2023.
PDF in 2023 is like, ugh.
It's like using an abacus to do accounting.
Yeah, it's like hearing that horrible sound from like dial-up internet. It's like,
That's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it is. Do you now? I guess question from left field here. Do you see a world where cyber insurance isn't necessary, where it doesn't exist? Do you see a future where that's possible?
I've heard some pretty technical security people and even some insurance carrier people say that in the future the risk is just going to be too big that cyber insurance will cease to exist. It's carriers aren't going to be profitable. They're not going to make any money, and they're all just going to stop selling cyber insurance. I don't hope to see that future. I don't think that future will happen. Maybe I'm biased because I literally sell cyber insurance for a living. But, humans like certainty. And if you ask most CFOs or CEOs, I think Warren Buffett has said, and everybody, what, keeps you up at night, or what's the biggest risk your company faces? It's cyber risk, cyber security. And, you can be, Fort Knox and have all the best controls in place and have phishing security awareness training. But that, 1 in 100 chance, or that, thing that slips through the crack, someone still clicks on a link, even though they've been trained not to. And even though you have, next gen firewalls and all of these great tools, you want to transfer that risk. You want $1 billion insurance company to come in and pay that $1 million claim or $100,000 claim and be an expert at paying that claim and doing it in a timely manner and getting you back up and running. So, yeah, will cyber insurance exist in the future? I hope so. I think thinking we're so secure that we don't need it is certainly, rainbows and unicorns.
Yeah. You remind me of a quote that not only I say often, but I've started to hear a lot of folks in my industry say is breaches are not a if, they are a when scenario now. And so what you should do beforehand is put in place all of the right controls and the right, if it's software or sometimes it's just people doing different things, the right policies to make sure that when a breach happens or when you suspect it happens, that the impact is small enough to be mitigated properly.
Totally.
Yeah. Awesome. I didn't think that's where you were going to go with that question. I thought you were going to go into the land of rainbows and unicorns, which is, of course, technology and software are going to catch up, and whatever cyber security is going to be a thing of the past. And instead, you're like, nope, risk is going to get so big that nobody's going to want to give us money anymore because it's going to be too much to secure. It's like, oh wow, I didn't even think of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a scary world. That and maybe people who work in Homeland Security know more than you and I. And we're going back to our first point of, well, maybe we want cyber insurance to exist in the future, and there should be a federal backstop to make sure that it does. There certainly won't be a federal backstop if there isn't a private cyber insurance marketplace underneath that as the primary risk transfer organization or mechanism. So Yeah, it'll be interesting to see kind of how it develops. But I mean, regardless, independent insurance agents and MSPs are really going to have to step up their game and take on that hat and that role as risk advisor, whether that's cyber liability or IT technical products and hardware and services. There's a big blend happening, which I think is the first person to have the holy trinity, so to speak, of MSP, insurance distributor, and I'll say security vendor trifecta will certainly be a special company.
Yeah, because they can all communicate with each other properly to actually not only give the data back to know where the risk actually is, but then have the MSP or the vendor actually step in and begin to mitigate additional risk that the cyber insurance carrier is now aware of.
Yeah, and I don't think we have a issue of not having enough data, but being able to pull insights from it and collaborate is really where I think the magic happens.
This was an interesting conversation. Not at all what I thought it was going to be. So, what's one last thing you'd love our listeners and our viewers to take with them about the future of cyber insurance?
I'm an optimist. The future is bright. Get the policy, make sure it's a good one, and keep doing what you're doing.
Awesome. Get the policy. Future is bright. Cyber insurance will be here to fight another day. And I'll add one more thing onto that. Please go talk to an expert like Brian here or anyone else in your local ecosystem. Cyber insurance is, well, cyber and insurance together. Those are two subjects that I know very little about and most people are very uncomfortable with. So combining them, I can only imagine, doesn't cancel out, makes it even worse.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, everybody, thank you for listening. I hope you learned a little bit about the future of cyber insurance, where it's going, where it might be going, or maybe it's going to its own grave. We don't know yet. Time will tell. And keep listening for next episodes. As the world of cyber insurance continues to evolve, I would love to have you back on, Brian. So I'm sure we'll be chatting again real soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Connor.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. Once again, I am Connor, CEO at Phin Security. I am your host, and I was joined today by Brian Mahon, cyber insurance extraordinaire. Thanks so much for tuning in to Gone Phishing. If you want to find out more about high-quality security awareness training campaigns, how to launch them in ways that actually engage employees to change their habits, then check us out, Phin Security, at phinsec.io. That's phinsec.io. Or click all of the wonderful links in our show notes. Thanks for fishing with me today, and we'll see you next time.